Yeah, a lot of the conversation has been just reminding myself that it's like if I go there and I don't win, that's now not a disappointment.
Sure.
Because I think for so long I was just focused on riding my race and doing my best. And when you see that like riding your race and doing your best can equal a national championship win, I think you expect that. So a lot of it's just been reminding myself not to focus on that. Of course, I might vocalize I want to win for sure, but um, to do that, you have to focus on just the things that you can control. And so,
Yeah.
if I can't slow down and do that, then I don't deserve a win. So,
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast, where we talk about bikes, life mentality, and when the occasion arises, we will dive into mental health. My guest today is Carson Beckett. He is the current cross-country marathon national champion and is getting set to defend his national title here in Roanoke, Virginia shortly. But we got Carson in the studio today to talk about all things from his career, including a fascinating story about how Dirt Camp Racing, the team he runs and also rides for, is working and the amazing things they are doing. Before we get Carson in the studio, I want to remind you that the Stable Cyclist podcast is brought to you by Flow Formulas. If you're training for a race or you are just training to be healthy, good nutrition is important, and Flow Formulas in your bottles and in your recovery is huge. You can use the code JohnPeter15 when you check out for a little discount on those goodies in your cart. Well, Carson Beckett, welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. And aside from a couple of appearances on the Bonk Bros, you are a mysterious man in the world of podcasting. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. But welcome.
thank you, thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't done a ton of podcasting out there, so this is yeah, I'm grateful.
It's all good. Your name is one that kept kind of trickling across when I would ask for suggestions, and then Colleen Marr really pushed me down the mountain as far as to go and talk to you. And of course this will air right around the time of nationals in Roanoke, and when you'll be defending that national championships title in Carvin's Cove territory, right in Gordon Wadsworth's literal backyard. But I thought this was a great time to talk with you and let people know who you are and let them know a little bit more. And so kind of to start with, because we don't really have a real good baseline other than, hey, you're the national champion. I kind of want to know how we get started into bikes and obviously kind of also like where were you located? Where are you located? Maybe that's never changed, but tell us a little bit of the origin story.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. No, I actually grew up in Kentucky, so pretty far west Kentucky too. So not necessarily Louisville area where there's a decent cycling scene already, but yeah, pretty much out in the outskirts of Western Kentucky. The short story is I kind of grew up doing everything outdoors. I was playing like three or four sports until I slowly just kept dwindling them down. I think at one point, I was playing like soccer in the fall and football, basketball. So then I got into biking with my dad and the bike shop. And like I said, I just slowly like chopped one of those out every year um, until I was only left with a couple. And so yeah, I grew up in Western Kentucky. Not a ton. I mean, we were fortunate to have a little hub of cyclists and buddies at a bike shop, and that's essentially how I got my start. Was just like going to the Tuesday, Thursday night group rides and trying to hold on for dear life. And eventually, you hang on for a little longer every time, and that's kind of how it started for me. And taking trips with the old guys on local like hot spots for technical riding. So I kind of just was baptism by fire, I guess you could say, just following them. And yeah, from there, fortunately, my dad was very strong in terms of advocacy and getting more kids on bikes and being involved in growing the scene. So he really pushed kind of leveraging me and where I was at with school. He really pushed to get Nika started there in Kentucky. Um, and yeah, happy to kind of look back at now at the exponential growth that's seen. So that's been really exciting. Um, but I would say, yeah, just it's ironic. I say the wheels really got turning for me with cycling in terms of having success. It's ironic because I guess the first national championships I went to, I won, but I wouldn't say, that was a Cat 2. That was like Cat 2, 15 to 18. So nothing super substantial, but
You can
um,
only beat the people you're racing.
exactly. So for me at the time, it was like I was supposed to go the year before when it was at Sun Valley, Idaho. This was 2012 or something, and I actually broke my collarbone. And looking back, I'm wondering if had I gone out west, like if that had entirely, if that had been a catalyst to like my career going in a totally different direction, maybe.
Sure.
Um, so it's interesting to think about it retrospectively. But yeah, the first year I went to nationals was Bear Creek, Pennsylvania. Won the Cat 2 15 to 18 XC. And then I think I beat Christopher Blevins in the Super D. So that's like my only time I can say I beat him. Um, but no, we're good buddies. So yeah, it's that blossomed from there. I was really interested in racing nationally and in what cycling could take me to and what it could do. And from there, I just went down the UCI pipeline. How do I get to UCI races? How do I get on a better team? How do I get to Europe? And so that's essentially how the career progressed through the early days. Kind of fast forward to now, I'm in Brevard, North Carolina, just like Colleen. So I was attracted to the area because I had done like a skills camp here when I was really young and checked out the school. It was a good fit. The area was unbeatable for me on the East Coast. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say. I've stuck here and planted some roots here. So yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot in there to unpack. I want to go back to, you said you're in Western Kentucky. Are we talking like Paducah or even more rural than
Exactly.
that? It was in
Yeah.
Paducah? Okay.
15, maybe 10 to 15 minutes east of Paducah.
Okay. And you said your dad was a big advocate in getting Nika going in Kentucky. How important, you had that early success and you had, was that Nika support also there when you were doing this? Did that kind of move with you since you were his kid, or did that come after?
I would say a bit after.
Okay.
When we so the when we started our team at my high school, we were the first Kentucky team to begin or to be initiated. And I think for the first 4 years, we actually raced in Tennessee's league because Kentucky didn't have one at the time. So we kind of piggybacked their league and raced in Tennessee for, I want to say, at least 4 years. And that's what
Okay.
I did. That was my like sophomore through senior year. Kentucky got a league maybe that fifth year, and then they kind of moved back to Kentucky racing. So it was still definitely in its infancy in my area, but I just got a bunch of my friends on board, and it wasn't necessarily I wasn't necessarily on the same page competition wise. It was just a lot of locals, and but I still loved it, and I loved having people my age finally to ride with and to go to training with. So yeah, that was kind of how it started.
Sure. And then you said you had that success early on, your first time going to nationals. And how much did that success just fuel the fire versus, like you said, if you go to Idaho the year before, maybe it doesn't go as well. But how much did that push you? You said those sports were just kind of falling away and you were doing other things, and all of a sudden you're national champion for, even if it is Cat 2 for your age group. How much did that success say, like, man, this is what I want to do?
Yeah.
And did you even know what you were really aiming at the time, like with pro mountain biking being a thing?
No, I mean, it was very much just like progression in terms of I started racing locally. We raced in Tennessee a bunch, just being located near Nashville area, and it was kind of like, well, we should try something else. And then we tried something else, and then it was like, what's this nationals thing? Let's try that. And it was, very bootstrap, like me and my dad and maybe my family in a truck, and we drove up to Bear Creek, Pennsylvania. Um, we did, we didn't really know what we were doing just from local experience, and I got out there and just like gave it everything. And uh, I think that was the moment I was kind of like, oh man, like there may be something here. I think honestly, I think I continued to balance a couple other sports until I finally just was like, I gotta pull the plug on this stuff. Like I'm definitely going in this direction. And um, to your point, there was no real plan other than once I had a bit of that experience and taste of success, I just wanted to see like what would be possible. What you could even do with it. And so that's yeah, it kind of went from there.
Who helped you kind of hone that direction then as you moved through things and as you moved specifically into mountain biking that saw like maybe there's something here to aim at down the road?
Definitely my dad. He was key in all of this. He was at the time racing and traveling a good bit too for bike races. I think when I was in middle school, maybe I went to watch him do Leadville 100, and I had no idea what Leadville was, and him and his buddies, I think drove out from Kentucky or whatever, and it was like I went out to watch, and I was like, "Why are you guys doing this? What is this?" So yeah, he had a history there, and a lot of his just older buddies kind of just lifted me up. They would follow me, and we would go to the local technical areas and like spend a Thanksgiving just riding around on rocks. And I think that exposure to just chasing faster people my whole life really pushed me until you kind of reached that point in the in the curve where you're now faster than them. Or
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so mostly my dad, and a lot of the bike shop people. Um, it wasn't until I got into a couple prestigious, I would say, development programs that I actually had like athletes my age to look up to and to push, which was Whole Athlete. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
Mm-mm.
they were kind of predecessor to the Bear development team, which is a really
Okay.
big
Yep.
Devo team now. And so I was on that program and then Bear. But yeah, for the early days, it was a lot of bike shop dads.
That's great. That's great. So I think I said it earlier, but you are the marathon distance national champion for mountain biking. And I'm guessing these early wins that you're getting obviously are in XCO. Is that correct?
Yes, I did XCO predominantly and chased, kind of just chased that to an end with going to Europe and racing World Cups. I think I did, 5 or 6 trips over there to do World Cups and World Championships as like a U23.
Yeah.
So I was pretty heavy into it, but there was never, like I said, it's ironic because my first national championships I won, but since then, there's never been like a breakout. I've just always been the podium guy.
Yeah.
And there was never a breakout race until last year with Marathon Nats as a pro. So,
But at some point you realized, or if I'm, scrolling through all of your Instagram and reading it accurately, there's some shift towards the marathon distance because I think 2 years ago you got third and you were kind of like, we're moving in the right direction here. And I believe that year Cole Patton and Caden Parker beat you. That was in 23. And then last year, of course, you win it. But where does that shift really take place from XCO to marathon where you're just like, I think this longer distance is what I'm here for?
yeah, you're spot on. I think I would say around that 2023 era, kind of that time frame is probably where the shift really started to happen. I was really enjoying racing World Cups overseas, and like there's nothing that can replicate that environment and that feeling as a
Sure.
younger kid, and loved it, but it was kind of like grinding me down. You would go over there and just you're spending a lot of money and energy to get over there. You've spent the whole season trying to get points to be even remotely in a good spot as in terms of starting position, and you get over there, you're trying to like get on time zone, figure it all out. Eventually you adapt. It's the whole American I guess issue that a lot of people talk about.
Yep.
But so enough of doing that, and I was never really, it was like top 40s was a good day. Just
Yeah.
so I could never really crack the code on it, and the return on investment was kind of wearing me down. I still loved racing domestically for sure, but I was kind of like, what are some options here? And I think I started dabbling in the Epic Ride series, which has
Oh,
since kind of dissolved, but is still there to an extent. And that plus trying a couple stage races around that like 2022, 2023 era. And then
sure.
I was like, I think this is interesting. Like, this is really cool. And I would say then, yeah, third twice at Marathon Nats. 2022 and 2023 was kind of like that pivot point for me.
Did your you got married in 2022 also? Did your wife have anything to do with you seeing the light better?
No, I mean, honestly, she has been there to support whatever I want to do. She's been amazing and has always like, I think I just had that classic, cyclist chasing the world view, which was like, afraid of change, basically afraid of
Mm-hmm.
losing a bit of control. And yeah, I was always like, we had been together 7 or 8 years before we even got engaged. But so we'd been together a long time. I knew it was coming. It was just like, well, why isn't everyone else that's a cyclist doing this? A lot of single guys in their mid to upper 20s, and was afraid to lose control. But a bit of a tangent, but no, it's been amazing. She's been super supportive, and has even been there for me when I've been like, hey, do you think I like pulled the plug too early? Should I try World Cups again? Like, they look really cool. And she's like, whatever you want to do. Um, but no, I think a lot of things kind of came together. I was performing in a couple marathon races. It interested me. Cross country was starting to become, like I said, like a bit of a low return on investment.
Yeah.
And then I just was like, I'm gonna try to push into this a bit. So,
Right
and
on.
and then with Lifetime too, I think
Yeah.
that coincides with the creation of the Grand Prix and all that. So that kind
Well,
of,
yeah. Well, that's what I was curious about. Is and maybe this is a question further in the conversation, but you've had a lot of success on the mountain bike, which makes me believe you're probably pretty quick on a gravel bike too. And have you thought about throwing your name in? Have you done it and I didn't notice? Or what are your thoughts on the Grand Prix and how that plays into things?
yeah, I guess I don't have necessarily a strong opinion either way in terms of the Grand Prix. I do think it's amazing, and I think that it is what it's done for American cycling. It's really elevated the opportunities here domestically. Personally, I don't have interest currently in being in it. I just think to be confined to a small amount of events that you have to perform at, and
Yeah.
half those, if not more, are very not conducive to my strengths. So um, I do, this year, like every year, I jump into one or two. This year I'll be
Mm-hmm.
in Schwamigan and Little Sugar. And as the series expands or evolves, I'll probably be in some more. I'm not sure when or if I'll ever be in the whole thing, but I really like what it's doing, and I like that it's kind of elevated some athletes. But yeah, the gravel for me right now is hard. I still see myself in that midfield of like, not like, I am a very still punchy rider, and that's when I thrive, is in the short-ish events. But at the same time, I've definitely shifted physiologically towards some marathon racing, but I'm in that sweet spot of like I can perform really well from 2 to 4 hours, but
Sure.
over that, it's like I'm not sure if I can hang on yet. So
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about that national championship. Listeners will know what I'm not interested in is like at mile 43, I made this move. I don't care. Sorry. What I'm interested in is I've heard you already in our conversation a lot mention the word chasing, and whatever you're chasing. And I know when you posted about the victory, you just said affirmation, period. That was your post. And you also mentioned how tough of a nut to crack it had been. So I'm wondering, like, what was this chase like? And then I'm also always curious about, like, you got to the top of the mountain, dude. Like, and what did you see when you got there?
ooh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure.
Yeah, I knew this is where we would spend a lot of time today, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's no, I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think I think like you to start with what you said, the affirmation part, that was kind of I was just driving home after the race, kind of by myself in the car, and just like, what am I gonna say about this? And all I could think of is it was just affirmation that like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sure you win a Cat 2 national championship and it's very important at the time, but once you get into deeper and deeper ponds and you realize you're quite a small fish, it's like, you know, cycling, you spend a lot of years and a lot of traveling just not winning. I mean,
Yeah,
90% of races, like you're not winning, if not
yeah,
more. So,
yeah,
um, I was never necessarily chasing a win. I think I was just reflectively, I was just always chasing affirmation that like I could show up having done the work to a race that mattered to me and like put it all together.
mm,
And quite often you show up to a lot of races and it's like almost, you know,
yeah,
I was always like I said, I was always pretty good, but started to kind of really grew. I started to really like deepen that groove of just being a podium guy and kind of always being just on the edges, and
yeah,
which is okay. You know, I think I had decided or I had kind of figured out pretty early on, like you can't chase wins and you have to figure out what success means to you in a sort of non-result oriented way. And um, so I think that's honestly what sustained me was just I loved what I was doing. I loved the opportunities that the sport provided, and it was like, you know, let's just see what I can do every year. Um, and so I spent a lot of quiet years just kind of like being on the edge. And yeah, to say out loud you want to win a race finally and to go and do it is kind of shell shock. Even in the race, you know, when I knew it was coming apart and I was like pretty certain I was going to win, I was playing that tape in my head, just being like, oh, dude, you might win. And then it was like, but what if you don't? You know, what if you flat on the next, you know, you just,
yeah, yep,
so a lot of doubt, a lot of the time, but also, I guess going back to your point, affirmation was just kind of what that race was about. It was just like, okay, like I can do it. I can set my sights on a race. I can do the work to get there and I can piece it all together. And not that, you know, it is just a race, but it happened to be the national championships, and
yeah,
you kind of join the pretty small crowd that now gets to wear that. So yeah,
yeah, and so that's my. I think a lot of people aspire to win races, especially at the very pointy end, but I don't know that we ever think about what happens if we do. And that's why I kind of said, like, what was the view of the mountain when you got to the top of it? Because I think, and from my own personal experiences, it can be pretty disappointing to reach the height of whatever you're trying to do, and the next day turns over and life just kind of moves on. And so how has this year been, and how did you deal with those feelings? Came whether or not we always put them on Instagram or not. For sure, those feelings come of like, okay, and maybe it's imposter syndrome, or maybe it's you know, trying to prove that you deserve this or whatever. But what has this year been like trying to follow that up?
Yeah, definitely. It was new to me, and I will say I think I did an okay job of trying to transition into, at least in the very short term, like the month or two past that, just being like really proud of myself and trying
Yeah.
to, not in a cocky way, but just trying to be like, okay, dude, you did it, and you've got to learn now how to believe in yourself going forward. Um, but I would say that it definitely, that was phase one, and phase two was then quickly like, okay, um, like a bit of imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
especially when you show up to some other races and maybe don't perform and you're wearing the
Hmm.
jersey. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a huge check mark, or sorry, it's a huge, uh, like, what is that saying? Bullet. I can't think. Target. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Huge target on your back. And so trying to kind of like push those emotions down and just be focused again. And then, yeah, phase three came pretty quick too, which was like, I don't know, a bit of this year has, I would go out on training rides and catch my mindset or my focus being like, man, I got to figure out how to defend this,
Yeah.
like I got to figure out how to keep it. So a lot of the mental game has just been trying to let go of all of that and just realize like, enjoy it while you have it. You may
Hmm.
never get it again. You may get
Hmm.
five more, but just let the jersey kind of excite you and motivate you. But you have, like, you don't have to prove anything. You've got it, but don't be so focused on getting it again that you don't even enjoy, your time with it. So
Yeah. Have you worked with anybody specifically to help you with those things? Your coach or a sports psychologist or anything?
uh no, not necessarily. And I think that's one area that, like, if I could go back in time, maybe I would take advantage of that,
Sure.
I think.
Sure.
um as a bit more aged or experienced athlete now, I feel like I've got a handle on, like, I went through all the experiences, and so now I can kind of have a bit more awareness about those emotions and those things. So I kind of know where they're coming from, and maybe how they can deceive us. But I will say that is something I try to at least use my experience to kind of pour into the kids that I coach on dirt camp racing. And just like, I explained to them, like, look, to be transparent, I've experienced everything across the emotional board, and here are some ways to process it, or here are some things to focus on so your races aren't disappointing, or that type of thing. But I would say I have not personally worked with anybody other than my coaches, so
Okay.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. So that, but you said, well, I don't want to focus on like, I have to defend this, but ultimately in a couple weeks, you're going to go to Carvin's Cove at Roanoke, I would guess, and try to defend it. And how have you kind of balanced those two ideas of like, I do have to think about defending this, but maybe it looks like just putting myself in a position to defend it versus I have to go win? Or what has that conversation with yourself looked like as you're preparing for this?
Yeah, a lot of the conversation has been just reminding myself that it's, like, if I go there and I don't win, that's now not a disappointment.
Sure.
Because I think for so long I was just focused on riding my race and doing my best. And when you see that, like, riding your race and doing your best can equal a national championship win, I think you expect that. So a lot of it's just been reminding myself not to focus on that. Of course, I might vocalize I want to win for sure, but to do that, you have to focus on just the things that you can control. And so
Yeah.
if I can't slow down and do that, then I don't deserve a win. So
Sure. Have you seen the course at all in Roanoke, or are you familiar with the area?
yeah, yeah. No, I got up there a few weeks ago, I guess sometime in May. Just did a quick stop through and rode the main meat of it. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think it'll be, I don't know, a bit more dynamic maybe. I think Auburn was very, very tight and very twisty, and you kind of had to position yourself well, but once you were there, it was just settling in. Um, I think Roanoke's going to have, two significant climbs for the pros, which should shake things up, and I like it. I think it does suit me. It's punchy. I've still got that cross country background a bit, so punchy's good. But it will be a bit long. Um, and yeah, we'll see. I do wish I was expecting Virginia, that area. I know it decently well, and I was expecting a bit more rock and a bit more technical
Sure.
features, but it's actually pretty tame in my opinion. So yeah, we'll have to see what we could do.
Well, I know Kerry Warner can show you some stuff just beyond where you're racing called the Dragon's Hole that's plenty
Yeah,
technical if you ever need to. So
yeah, yeah,
so
definitely.
you've mentioned Dirt Camp Racing a couple of times. That's the team you race for. And I know in all of your posts that I read so many times you just talked about I can't wait to hang out with the Dirt Camp family again. And I want you to tell about this team. I didn't know anything about it, to be totally honest, until I interviewed Colleen. And now that I've learned a lot more about it, I'm like, this is pretty cool. But tell us what it's like. Tell us, it is a pretty big group of people and also pretty dynamic in age ranges, if I'm not mistaken. So take it
Yeah,
away.
yeah. I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it, and I think that this program is kind of one of the singular forces that has made the difference in terms of my enjoyment with the sport too. Um, but to give a quick brief on how we got here, Dirt Camp Racing was kind of born out of this idea that I had two or three teammates at the time. We all aged out of our development team at the time, which was Bear National Team or Bear Pro Team. We aged out when we turned 22, 23, and wanted to stick together, but also find a way to do something. Create a program. We knew that pro racing was not necessarily the easiest thing in the US. There's very limited spots, and the model of just like results are the focus. You perform or you're out type of thing was also not didn't really sit well with us. So all of us had experience coaching and kind of got together and tried to figure out how what would that look like how can we be a part of leading or guiding a program that's also sustaining itself so that we can continue to race too. Kind of had a bit of a false start going through COVID,
Sure.
and then regrouped on it and went down south to Alabama and did a skills camp for some younger kids on a team called A Team down there. And that was when the wheels got turning, and we actually to fast forward, we merged with them, sort of absorbed their development program and their development focus, and then me and my three or four pro buddies basically served as mentors and head coaches, and at the same time pros on the same program as them. So from there, it's blown up. But the whole point of it was basically to do something with our own careers, to give back, not just be racing and chasing that success and sort of the tangible stuff, but to have something to look back on and know that we left a mark on and know that made a difference in terms of developing or fostering the next generation of cyclists. And so that was the ethos, I guess, around the program. But since then, yeah, it went from the two or three of us with maybe 10 or 12 kids on it, and then the next year it was 20, and then it was 40, and now it's like I think we have 60, 70 people on staff, or I guess on the team, and another 12 or so on staff. So it's blown up, and I'm really excited about it because the way it works is, I mean, I guess I always tell people that as far as I know, it's at least the only current, if not the first program that is completely integrated from 15, 16 Devo athletes to salaried pro athletes with a master's program on top of that. And so we have it tiered all different ways in between there, but it's essentially a way to support a lot of variety of athletes in different directions of the sport, um, while also having pros on the same thing as them. So we're not coming in as like, hey, we're different than you, and we show up to a lot of the same races as them. We take them on course pre-rides. We are there. We have 2 or 3 different coaches that they can choose from. So there's a lot of really cool resources built into it.
Yeah. This is incredible what you're doing with it. How has it been easier to develop this in the mountain bike world? Because I talk to a lot of gravel people that are trying to get development programs going in gravel, and it's kind of slow to say the least.
Yeah.
But I know in the mountain bike scene, I've seen this more. When I talk with sponsors, they are working with various groups like yours. Why has that growth been more easy, I guess, for you in the mountain bike world versus the gravel world? And maybe you don't have an opinion on that, but that's just as I look at the landscape, that's how it looks.
Yeah, I think that it has a lot to do with the culture that you establish.
Hmm.
I mean, relationships, marketing, like all that stuff, definitely part of the equation. But kind of your point about my post, just I love being a part of it. I love looking, forward to the events and the people I'm going to be around. So I think that making sure that you're, I guess I would say, making sure that you know what kind of culture you want to establish and holding to that in the team. Um, Athletes will come and go if they like it, don't like it. But I think as long as, I mean, I think we're more of a family than anything. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have
Yeah.
this like fun, uh, open floor, like just we're all about community. And that's sort of our culture. And I think once sponsors see that, once they get it, once organically the athletes are sort of spreading their stoke for the program, it'll take time, but word gets out. And I think it may not make the most like prosperous program at first, but I think that it will continue to kind of snowball.
Yeah.
And then once it's established, it's hard to ignore it. So, yeah.
How you mentioned sponsors, and obviously you guys have them as well at the pro level, but how much brand integration have these sponsors done with you? Like, do they do any kind of educational stuff when you have your big gatherings, or are they just more like, here's whatever you need, will be there for you?
No, they've certainly been involved in a lot of other ways, and I think that is one thing we are trying to, uh, I guess, make special about our program. So we have monthly team calls. We have like monthly team calls with everybody, and then the next week we'll have breakout calls for each individual race tier with the coaches, and then the third week of the month we'll have pros and coaches only. So every month you're getting those 3 chances, and every month we try to ask a sponsor or have somebody come on as a guest speaker. So we've had, John Vargas at Orange Seal. We've had
Yeah.
Ryan Standish,
Yeah.
who's also involved with Orange Seal. We've had different other elite level athletes, USA Cycling people. So we're trying to just basically be this really deep um, resource pool for the athletes, and just give them. And same with the sponsor layout. We once they're on the program, they have access to all of our different sponsors. It's Orange Seal, it's
Sure.
Specialized, it's
Sure.
uh, whatever, bikes to clothing to nutrition. So we're just trying to basically just be a platform for them to have a ton of resources, and to try to help them grow as individuals and athletes.
Yeah. Has that been difficult as it's kind of like scaled way out in size to maintain that touch, or have some of these meetings? Sorry, I'm going like super granular on
No,
this.
you're fine.
I'm fascinated by like community building and youth development done right. And I'm just like, whoa, this is awesome. But yeah, how have you, as this thing is blown up from 8 kids in Alabama to what it is now, have you been able to scale it in a way that works for everybody?
Yeah, there's been growing pains because I mean not to like toot our own horn, but we haven't really had a model to look after. There's no
Yeah.
current example of what we're doing in terms of the sport. Sure,
Yeah.
there's other development programs that are there's the Bears and the Donovans, and those programs are doing amazing jobs. But in terms of having an integrated program from bottom to top, so to speak, we've had to really figure out how that looks and how to make sure that there is both progression built into the program so athletes
Yeah.
can have a place to grow up to, and also just making sure each tier, each group of athletes has the respective support they need, and while also not essentially running out of money to give them
Yeah.
to give
Yeah.
them that
Yeah.
support. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's been challenging for sure. Like I said, I think just figuring out a way to be very culturally focused, and building the right environment, and from there, we've kind of had to work out the little things along the way, certainly.
A quick interruption here to remind you that the Stable Cyclist podcast and my main title sponsor this year in the work that I am doing on the bike is Works Cycling Services. Of course, Works Cycling Services does things like coaching and consulting, but probably they are best known for the 4 races in Minnesota, the grassroots races that they put on. Of course, earlier this year, I did Granny's Gravel Grinder, and you can go through my YouTube library and find my onboard recap of that race. Also, they put on the Hot Dish, which just took place a few weeks ago. I had the privilege of doing that, and it is absolutely a banger course in the driftless bluff country of southeastern Minnesota. Coming up later this summer, on August 2nd, is the Dam, the Day Across Minnesota. And then closing things out this fall is the Filthy 50. Now, all of these races are put on by Work Cycling Service. Chase Wark and Zach McKinney are your race directors, and you will have an amazing, good grassroots time, and the cost for all of these events is kept very low compared to some of the ballooning costs of other races around the region and country. So, if you want to make that trip or plan that trip to the beautiful Minnesota countryside, start looking on workcyclingservices.com today and start planning that trip. All right, back to the podcast. Yeah, well, I can tell you, Carson, from being at Unbound, following around Chase Wark, that one of the days we were at an autograph signing for him and Drew Dillman, and there were a couple of Dirt Camp Racing kids that came by in their kit, and they were so excited to talk about it and so excited about what's going on in the program. And it made me really excited to talk more with you about it, because I love seeing youth excited about whatever sport they're doing in a really healthy way. So you guys are doing awesome. You mentioned it's you and 2 others that are kind of running everything.
Well, there's quite a few now. I think at the
Okay.
beginning, at the beginning it was me, me, Jerry DeFore, Eli Cranefuss, and we're kind of managing I guess, our side of things. And then
Sure.
that's when we met Joseph Dabbs and Aaron Heiser, who were managing the A team. And so once we merged, wheels got rolling, it became, officially a non-for-profit organization. We got a
Gotcha.
board, which is then, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
we have to have a board. So
Yeah.
we have a board. So yeah, and it's honestly a lot of our board is made up of just like either parents or associated people in the sport that are just talented in whatever field it is, and they're super passionate about what we're doing. So we haven't had to like outsource a lot of people that aren't familiar with the sport. It's been people being like, "Hey, what can I do? How can I be involved?" And that's been amazing. But right now, the way it works is, depending on what tier you go into, you've got variety of options, and we've got like a Devo head coach. We have a U23 and a national team coach. We've got so like two or three coaching options. We've even got kind of gravel endurance specialist options. Kyle McDonald and some others are going to kind of step into that role who maybe aren't in the cross country specific field, but they're
Sure.
able to take the kids who are a bit more passionate about endurance and gravel, where we don't have to just shut them down and say, well, it's not what we do. We've
Yeah.
had to expand with the growth of gravel, so now we've got some people kind of leading the coaching and the training in that regard. So we've got, I don't know how many now, but quite a few staff or leaders in the team.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So one of the posts that you mentioned how excited you were to just see Gravel Family again was unfortunately on your way on October 8th on your way to Little Sugar. And on September 22nd, you had posted, I'm at the Snowshoe World Champs course for XCM. And a couple days later, a hurricane hit everything precious to you in North Carolina. And you said in that post, ultimately, that's why this group of people is so important to you. But what was that whole experience like? Because I think sometimes we move on pretty quickly news wise, and a lot of people in Brevard, I think, are still trying to clean up from what happened there. So what was that whole experience like of being at World Champs to coming home to a mess?
It was a big perspective shift for sure. I would say that's kind of the best way to sum it up. You go from worrying about, I got to recover from the world champs and I've got these other big goals. I got to do this today. I got to make sure I recover on this day. You're very like self-centered in terms of career. And then when everything changes, and granted, I don't want to speak out of turn because like where we are was very fortunate. Um,
Sure.
Mostly unscathed. There's a lot of landslides and stuff like that still that are just kind of sitting and growing. But our community locally was okay. But yeah, I mean, you go 30 minutes up the road to Asheville and beyond, and there's places still up there without roads.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild. But I would say it was just a big perspective shift. It was like worried about the little minutia of being a bike rider to being like, okay, I got to figure out how to get water today and like, what are we going to cook before it thaws out and gets bad? And
Yeah.
so I unplugged for a few days, was able to find a kind of a route to get home. I just knew, we weren't helpful here. We were just kind of sitting and eating what we had and wasting time. So yeah, I went home to see family, stayed with them basically for a month, made it over to Little Sugar and finished the year out a little weird, but yeah, those situations certainly kind of reel you in terms of like what really really matters and like gives you a bit of perspective. So
Yeah. No, most definitely. Uh, all right. We've had a lot of like serious to kind of serious talk. It's time to unwind here a little bit with our rapid fire at the end.
awesome.
And I always start with what we call the gas station question. And the gas station question is that you and I are going to go for a really long training ride. And we're talking like 5-6 hours, and we're going to run out of supplies. You can't take Dylan Johnson's answer and just say, well, I'm not going to run out. Yeah, we are, Dylan. We are. And we're going to be at like a very rural gas station. So you can't also take my boy Chase Wark's answer and say, well, I'm just going to fill up on Fountain Pop. No, Fountain Pop does not exist at this gas station. So there's like bare essentials.
Okay.
We're in the hills of Appalachia somewhere or out in Kentucky, wherever you want to be. But we got to refuel. What are we getting, man, to eat and drink?
I would say, you wanna get some sort of electrolytes in for sure if we're out there for a long time. Uh, I'm gonna probably go with like I would say they're gonna have some sort of form of Gatorade. Every
Yeah,
gas
a
station's
hundred
gonna have
percent. Yeah,
Gatorade.
yeah.
So I'm gonna grab at least a couple of those. If you need a sugar fix, maybe hopefully one of those like small glass Cokes, like the Mexican ones are legit.
Yes.
I'm gonna grab a few of those for sure. And then, man, I get like so overwhelmed in gas stations trying to like figure out what I want sometimes. But
That's why this is a hard question.
I know. I think the safe bet is, everyone has gummy worms or gummy
Yep.
bears, something like that.
Yep.
That's going to be really good on the sugar. But if you're like, I just want something satiating, a payday bar for me.
Oh, good man.
Yeah.
You hit my two favorites, Coke and a Payday. Now, you are in Appalachia, or kind of on the edge of it, and I guess Brevard is fully in it. If you hit a gas station there, next to the cash register, are there ever snacks like covered in
Mm,
cellophane or tinfoil?
yeah,
And would you ever get those?
for sure. For sure. It
Okay.
depends what it depends what it is. If it's some form of like a pastry, for sure.
Okay.
If it's like some local thing that you may or may not like, I don't know if I'm gonna have a gut bomb after this.
Sure.
Maybe not, but those are typically a safe bet, I would say.
Yeah. Well, that's what Gordon says. He's like, I want unlabeled tinfoil. And I'm like, that's
Yeah,
really dangerous, man.
yeah. Though now, like the roller dog station may be a bit of a risk. You
Yep.
don't know how long that's been there, but yeah, anything that's like someone's cookie or someone's brownie, like go for it.
Right on. Okay. When you are out riding, are you listening to music ever?
I do.
Okay. What's
Um,
what's on the national champion Carson Beckett playlist?
it depends. I will. One caveat is I'm a big podcast guy.
Right on.
So if it's an endurance day, I might throw you on or someone else on and like kill a couple hours. Uh, and I love that. I think that's an endurance day though. Once you
Yeah.
start getting into intervals, it's like either nothing or music. So
Yep.
music wise, I have one playlist downloaded for offline use because my wife shares the Spotify, so we can't listen at the same time.
Yep.
And all it is like Creed playlist. So it's just it's like it's not just Creed, but it's like that rock era. So yeah.
That's fantastic. So great I ripped my headphone out.
Uh,
All right. So, I don't know what you use. I use Wahoo. This is a new question because it's come up a lot in the last few weeks with the people I hang out with. On my main screen, I don't want to hear about your screen. Oh, I'm going to swipe over and look at the climb or any of that garbage. No, you get one screen. I want to know what's on it. My screen has watts per 5 seconds, beats per minute, total ride time, miles. I don't know what that is, and clock.
yeah, I
because
was
I'm
gonna
because I'm a dad and a husband, and the clock, Matt, I gotta be back by a certain time. So
man, I was gonna try to pull it up so I can give you very specifics, but I know. Oh yeah, here we go. I'll pull it up for you. Um, I'm a clock guy as well. I'll just guess because I can't find it. But I'm gonna have like time at the top for sure. I will have miles. I will have elevation and elevation gain. So like what you're at currently and what you've gained. Um, and then on the big one, the Rome, I believe, I've got a few other options, which goes to like KJs, intensity factor, and time. So I think intensity factor is kind of an overlooked one because for me, I don't, I'm not a huge data nerd, but if you go out for an endurance ride, that's I think really helpful to kind of
yeah,
sit at like a certain, it's a little more like specific about,
yep,
power can fluctuate, but like basically where you're at. KJs is helpful. I don't know why. I mean, I'm still shooting for grams of carbs per
yeah,
hour,
yeah,
but
yeah,
if I look down and I see like 2,000 already, and I'm like, better eat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know what the one field that I couldn't identify is what gear I'm in, which I never
Mm,
thought would be important. But whether I'm on a mountain bike or on a gravel bike, if I'm on a long climb and it's really steep, it's just peace of mind to know, like, oh, I'm out of gears. I can't,
yeah.
versus that like soul crushing
You just
shift.
keep tapping it.
Yeah, and nothing. So I'd rather
uh,
just know. So, okay, fantastic. All right, this one is very important to our listenership. We need to know, are you Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter?
oh, dang. Like, is this more like if you could only watch one, or you just favor
Which
one?
which is your favorite?
Man, that's tough. I have another caveat. All right, so I'm gonna go with Harry Potter,
Okay,
but the caveat is it's because the Hobbits. I prefer the Hobbit over the Lord of the Rings.
okay,
So, but
that's
if it was
fair.
the Hobbit and Harry Potter, I would go Hobbit.
Okay, so if you like Harry Potter, then the only logical question is, which house do you believe you belong to?
Hmm. Gryffindor for sure. I'm kind of a I'm kind of like a
You seem like
plain
a nice guy trying to help others.
plain Jade. I can't break rules. I suck at lying. uh,
Fair, fair. You right over my shoulder here, you can see my Slytherin doll that's sitting there. So we
that's
can still
awesome.
be friends though. It's all good. All right. Uh these last two are kind of back to bike racing. I want to know, and I just want to know, like marathon style races or long distance style mountain bike racing. I don't want to hear about going to somewhere in, you know, California to race a XEO. What is your favorite marathon or long distance style mountain bike race that you've done?
Favorite. I would say for me probably the Swiss Epic 5 day part of the
Yeah.
Epic series, I guess they would call it. Sort of a sister event to the Cape Epic. The Swiss Epic's just like 5 days of the most insane views, and I just love the like following a route, like blind
Sure.
riding. You don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
So that I'm gonna go with Swiss Epic.
How many sets of brake pads did you burn up in 5 days of racing in the Swiss mountains?
Last year a lot. I think we got pads maybe every other day.
Okay.
There was one day where I think he bled. We had a mechanic with us, and he bled the brakes every day. But after the third day, he had to change out fluid because we had boiled the fluid
Ah, of course.
because we had like 11,000 feet of descending or something. So, uh,
Those are long. How long are we talking here in minutes for some of these descents? Like an hour of descending?
I wouldn't go that far, but there
Okay.
was definitely plenty of like 20 minuters.
Okay.
Um, and Switzerland's interesting because sometimes it's bike park, but a lot of the times you're on like a hiking trail and then it'll transition to someone's backyard and then like a gravel road and then off to another hiking trail. Um, so it was aggressive for sure.
Sure. Sure. All right. So last one is, what is that style of race, XCM or ultra long distance, that you really want to go do that you haven't? Could be in the US, could be somewhere else. Um, you know, the bingo card that has the Iceland Rift race has been named by like everyone, it seems. So what do you got?
Mm, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't know.
The Matahe film posters right behind me there, so you could of course
Oh,
name
rad. Yeah,
Matahe. But yeah, what do you look at and say, man, I really want to go do that?
I really want to go do that. Torn.
You can name a couple. You don't have to just name one.
Yeah. So specifically on my mind is BC Bike Race.
Yeah.
I think next year is the last year that they are doing the current format of 7 days of racing. I don't know what it's going to after that. I think that's really cool. Um, I would like to do something kind of epic, but at the same time, I'm not a huge like sleep deprivation guy. I'm not into that. So,
Yeah. Fair.
um, so yeah, I think just multi-day stuff where you are, like the Swiss Epic style stuff. BC Bike Race comes to mind. Um, and then yeah, just in terms of riding, like I think it would be really cool to do some of those exploratory ones like over in Iceland and stuff.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, Carson, this has been fantastic just to get to hear about your career and to hear about the amazing work you're doing with Dirt Camp Racing. I would guess there's a link where people can go to give to Dirt Camp Racing if they're interested in supporting the work you're doing. Is that correct?
For sure. I believe on all the platforms, social and everything, we're Dirt Camp Racing or dirtcampracing.com. And then, of course, you can find links to my stuff there as well and newsletter options and stuff like that. So
Perfect. I'll find all those that are relevant and put them in the descriptions for
sweet.
this episode. But yeah, man, thanks for your time. I really appreciate just what you're doing and best of luck coming up this season.
Thank you, man. Thanks for your work and appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks for hanging out with Carson and me today. If you enjoyed the podcast, do me a favor and share it with someone who you think might enjoy it. Also, if you are listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star rating. If you haven't done so, please and thank you. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast platform, do me a huge favor and leave a written review as well. If you are watching on YouTube, you can please give a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the other content like the Bootleg Miles, which is the vlog series going on throughout the summer, where you can check out what my day at the Hot Dish Race was like. Finally, more important than anything you've heard all day, thank you for hanging out with us, and remember that you are loved.